In today's Gospel reading, we heard an excerpt from what is known as the prayer of Jesus, being the prayer that he did at the Garden of Gethsemane just before his arrest and his suffering. That prayer is depicted on that big icon up in our gallery, the prayer at Gethsemane. Now, of the many things that he said, one of the things that I'd like to focus on this morning is his words about unity and how important unity is for this family known as the Church. He says, I am praying for them. I'm not praying for the world, he means the world at large, but for those whom you have given me, for they are mine. All mine are yours, and yours are mine. Now this is interesting because this passage, this last sentence, has made its way into Greek folklore as one of the proverbs Greeks use. And the Greek is «Και τα εμά πάντα σα εστίν και τα σα εμά». All mine is yours and all yours are mine. In other words, there is no separation between what belongs to God the Father as the divine and Jesus Christ as something else. No. Since Jesus Christ is also divine and is indeed the very God that we refer to, one God, then we cannot separate things that belong to God and Jesus separately. Everything that belongs to God the Father belongs to God the Son, and vice versa. He says, he continues, Holy Father, keep them in your name, protect them in your name, which you have given me, that they may be one. Inaosin en, even as we are one. Jesus Christ himself clearly says that he is one with the Father. Now, people can give multiple interpretations to these words and attribute some loose harmony of Jesus with God, oneness, it's a nice idea. But the Orthodox Christians, and indeed all the mainstream Christian denominations, would say and understand that passage as oneness not being some rough, approximate oneness. That's not oneness. Oneness means oneness, just one. That there is a complete identification, a complete unity, a complete union, and there's no separation. That's how we understand this phrase, where Jesus Christ himself reveals his divinity with such words. And those who have been following since Easter, every single Sunday passage is a revelation of Christ's divinity, one way or another, whether it's others saying it of him or he himself revealing it either through word or action. And here's another one. Being the second last Sunday of this period leading up to Pentecost, beginning with Easter and leading up to Pentecost, which is what we celebrate next week as the final act of salvation, of the plan of salvation. so unity of the Church. We celebrate and remember today the gathering of the First Ecumenical Synod. Now this is very important. Why would the Church appoint all the possible synods that have occurred throughout the centuries, both ecumenical, worldwide councils that is, and regional and local councils? Why is that one appointed on this day, just before Pentecost? Because it is with that historical event in 325 AD that the leaders of the Church of that time demonstrated and defined what Church is. So the Church is not a cult. That's the first thing we do. And define the Church as not being a cult. A cult is a complete giving over to a specific religious leader who takes complete control and complete advantage of his or her followers. Plenty of cults out there. The Church is not an institution. An institution, an organisation that is on par with other institutions and organisations. Let's use an example, perhaps government. Government is an institution. It's a body, it's a way that things work. It's a coming together of different people in society to do something for society. And most often in this day and age, good for society, but not always. And obviously this is a work in progress and something we should constantly strive for and not take for granted. So the Church is not a government. Government controls people's lives. Government legislates in the best case scenario for the good of society, and a good government respects the freedom of the people and gives the parameters that secures that freedom and that well-being of its people. That's the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, there are governments who cross that line of those parameters and start taking control of the lives of its people and start going beyond what we expect a government to be, and over-controlling and over-authoritarian, and in the worst case scenarios, totalitarianism and dictatorship, with no respect of its people. So the Church doesn't do that. The Church doesn't control, doesn't tax, doesn't legislate people's lives. There is a certain freedom of our people to do what they wish to do. And the Church, if the closest thing we have to legislation is what we call our canon law, which once again is not law, but parameters and guidelines that give us a bit of understanding and direction as to what our lives can benefit from through diachronic experience. So the Church is not a club. This is another good example. A club is a gathering of people with a common cause or a common interest, and there might be a common pooling of funds and money in order to achieve this common interest, like a hobby or a cultural interest or a cultural association or a sports club or a soccer club and so on. Now, the Church can have all these bits and pieces and elements of both government, club and any other organisation, but that's not our primary thing. That's not our primary objective. That's not our primary definition of what we are. So in gathering in a council, the fathers of the First Ecumenical Council set the precedent. Of course, they are following the example of the apostles, who also gathered in council in order to make decisions and define our common purpose, i.e., there is no dictatorship in the Church. There is no one leader. We gather in council of equals. People have an equal vote, that is, the bishops of the Church, the leaders of the Church, who represent their local communities, mind you, and who make a decision in council. The Greek word for council is synodos, and that renders in English as synod, which many other Christian denominations also have as their mode of governance, the synod. When things are historically healthy, bishops gather, they represent their people, they make a decision, the decision is then announced to the local churches, which make up a body, bishop, priests, people, try to absorb this decision. If this decision is reflective and in harmony with the Church's life and experience, then that decision is embraced with time. If that decision is not in harmony with the Church's experience, dogma and life, then with time, once again, it falls to the wayside or is, in worst case scenarios, more aggressively rejected, and we have schisms that come as a result of such decisions which are not in harmony with the Church's experience and dogma. So the onus is, of course, on our leaders, the bishops, to be attentive to this, and they know this, and they are, if you look at the history of the Church, there is a good record, there is a good consistency and care and carefulness with decisions that are made. Of course, through history, it's not always the case, but that's why we have synods. And that is this: the purpose of the synod allows for a bad decision to be corrected. And this is a good thing. Unlike the papacy, for example, where a decision is made, and very often, historically speaking, a pope on his own makes the decision independent of a synod, and that decision sticks. There is no way of correcting that decision, and there are any number of issues that have been decided unilaterally in the Roman Catholic Church. For example, that priests should not marry. That was a unilateral decision, not taken in council with the rest of the churches in the world, with its historical consequences, because there's no correction of it. A year or two ago, the Roman Catholic Church, which still has councils and synods, of course, gathered in what was known as the Amazon Council to deal with problems and issues in the Amazon basin in South America. And they said, look, we've got a problem, we've got this problem, we can't get priests, we can't ordain priests. We have this problem where priests, in that culture specifically, there's no such thing as not getting married. And so we have a problem in finding the personnel to run the church in the Amazon basin. Shall we not consider allowing people, men, to get married such that they can be ordained? And there are many Catholic subgroups, especially pretty much only from the Eastern tradition, who have come under Roman jurisdiction. All of the priests are married, so therefore why don't we allow this to happen in the Amazon basin? Said the body of the Roman Catholic bishops in council, and voted overwhelmingly, I think it was at the height of 3/4 were in favour of allowing men to get married for this purpose. The decision is then taken to the Pope, one of the friendliest popes we've had in a long, long time, Pope Francis, but he rejects it. Says, I can't go against centuries and centuries of practice especially where so many popes who, according to the doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church, are in fact infallible, can't make a mistake. If we say that we'll accept this, then it's like saying we made a mistake all these years. That's a problem in the Roman Catholic Church, that one man can overrule the entire body of bishops in the Church. This does not take place in the Orthodox Church and is a good example of one of the reasons we are actually very politely and civilly separated. Number one, we gather in council. If a council makes an acceptable decision, it's accepted by the body of the Church. If a council makes a decision that is not acceptable to the body of the Church, there's no one man, no patriarch, no single bishop that can do that, can reject the decision. It needs to be given over to the experience and subsequent life of the Church, and then a subsequent council either ratifies and says, yes, that was reflective of the life of the Church, or that very subsequent council will say, that didn't work, that wasn't reflective, we will renounce that decision or those decisions. That's how it works. It's a healthy system. There has been much criticism from, and this is vice versa now, so we get as much as we give. The Roman Catholics look at the Orthodox and say, look how disunited they are. They don't have a pope, a single man to keep it all together, and they have all these councils and they keep having all these troubles and chaos in their history. They see that as a problem. We see it as a virtue because you can correct your mistakes. Yes, it hurts. We're a family. Yes, there are times when a family can disagree and be in turmoil, but it is with the coming together of the body again in council that all these things are rectified. What's the result? The result is a consistency, a very good consistency of doctrine and practice in the Orthodox tradition, as opposed to some of the extreme decisions that have been made in the past by singular authorities in various denominations, and which just stick and can't be corrected. In the Protestant realm, a single pastor has full power, normally, and what you get is, once again, a decision made, and then you have a further breakaway of the group protesting against their parent church, and then they go make their own church. So once again, the problem is this authority being brought down to the one man. You can't do that, whether it's the papal system, the Protestant pastors, and even in the Orthodox Church. The answer is the council, the synod. And we celebrate that. We celebrate the results of this. And this is the first and prime example of a worldwide rendition of this system, the synodal system, and we hold it up as the ideal, as an example, as a paradigm of how we, all of us in the Orthodox Church, should operate on a worldwide level, regional level, countries, local level, i.e. the local parish. All of these bodies of church operate in a conciliar fashion, in harmony and in unison. Dear friends, it is with great joy that we've heard from the government last week that church can now be open to the public at a maximum of 50 people. And the first opportunity we have to do this is next Saturday, being Psycho-Sabato, Souls Saturday. Now, in order to keep this under control and that we don't end up with more than 50 people and risk ourselves a very, very big fine, we are running an online booking system which will be emailed to everyone who's on our email, and it will also be posted on social media. you basically need to book your place coming to church. The government expects us to do a couple of things. Number one, keep a list of people with their numbers in case we need to trace back people, in case there is an infection of coronavirus. And secondly, that we do all the relevant precautions, i.e. hand sanitize, not share books, not be too close to each other. We will mark the pews of the church with stickers where it will indicate to you where you can sit. We will farewell the icons of the saints after today. In this 3-month period where we've not had people, we have had the greatest company ever, i.e. the saints. Of course, they were always with us in spirit, and this was a very beautiful way of expressing that we are not alone in this. And when we will have human beings and people back in church, the saints will be praying for us from afar.